Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is my second live stream of the day, and without further ado, God, I'm getting my words mixed up already. I want to introduce a new person to SPTV. Everybody say welcome and hello to Jeff, PTS for Life. How you doing?
I'm amazing. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and welcome. This is your first live stream interview type thing, right?
Everything. The first everything.
So excited. And for those of you watching, if you want to go and subscribe to Jeff's new channel, it's PTS for Life. I'm actually wearing a shirt I thought you'd appreciate. This is one of my merch things.
Yeah, I saw that. That's perfect. Fitting.
Just for you, Jeff. I love it. Here's a link to his channel in the chat for everyone. So go and show him some love. You're new to YouTube. So yeah, do you want to start off with who are you? Where have you come from? Why are you here?
Yeah. So my name is Jeff. And I grew up, I'm a second generation Scientologist. I grew up in Vancouver. My parents moved, actually they were in Toronto to start off with, and they moved here when I was about probably 3 months old. Barely big enough to fit outside of my dad's hand. I was a tiny little guy. And from there, my life started off with Scientology training and going to a Scientology school throughout my entire life. I've never actually set foot into a public school before. And then when I was approximately 12 years old is when I really started my Scientology career. First course I ever did was the communication course. And 2 years later, ended up joining staff at a Class 5 org, but was quickly recruited into the Sea Org because they saw my potential. And from there, I spent pretty much my entire adult life in and out of Scientology.
So how old were you when you first joined the SEAL? Did you say you're a teenager?
14.
And for those of you watching, joining the SEAL organization is not a light thing to do. It's a 1 billion year contract. You're dedicating not just this life, but all of your future lives to Scientology, right? How did that happen? Like, what were you coerced into signing your SEAL contract? Did you willingly go, hey, I want to do this for the rest of my life? What was that like?
Yeah, so, it was a long time ago. I'm 41 now, so memories are a little bit vague at points, but I do remember being heavily recruited. I used to hang around the Vancouver org because my dad and mom were both on staff. And so I was just kind of always around. I was running up and down the halls, causing trouble. And when they saw me, they said, you know what, let's just get him going. And they said, come see us in this room. And they heavily recruited me. I didn't actually know what I was doing at the time. They would just tell me how important it is. They'd start saying how bad the world is, that the only hope is for mankind is that you do this. And I signed that contract and I had no idea. To tell you the honest truth, though, the main reason I did it was to leave school. I just didn't like school. It was just kind of a way to escape without getting in trouble. Definitely off purpose, as they would call it in the church. But I did it. And as I was saying to you before, I was actually trafficked down there. I wasn't supposed to go because I didn't actually have my mom's permission, as my parents were divorced at the time. I was living with my dad, but my mom had legal guardianship and she had no idea that I had gone. And so I actually got sent back up, which is a whole interesting story, to convince my mom that it's okay that I go down there. But I was kidnapped and trafficked.
So were both your parents Scientologists? They
were at the time. Right. My mom was kind of on the outs with the organization. My dad was still active. Yeah.
And that's just insane. Like, I just want to bring attention to that for a moment. As a teenager, you were quite literally kidnapped and trafficked from Canada to America. There are two different countries legally. They are separate companies. You were sent from one country to another as a minor to go and work for the Church of Scientology without one of your parents' permission, consent, or even knowledge. what were you thinking at the time when this was happening? Because I'm guessing you didn't look at it like that at the time, right?
No, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. I was not properly informed. I mean, how can you be as a 14-year-old or even less than 18? Like, you don't know. You don't truly understand the gravity of the situation of being brought to a different country and put into forced labor. You know, I'm like, I was a couch potato.
Hmm.
I didn't do anything, like, you know, ride my bike, go play outside, but for the most part, I didn't do stuff. And so to be thrown into 12-hour work weeks, 7 days a week, there was one point where I worked 36 hours straight. The reason for that was because it was big, the golden age of tech. This was in '96, so the golden age of tech, when it first came out, I was part of that project to get the materials going, and it was crunch time, so they just made everyone work. No sleep, rarely ate. Yeah, it was horrible. So what was I thinking? I didn't like it very much when
Yeah.
I got down there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think one thing to note is when you get recruited into the Sea Org, it's sold to you as this big dream, right? They go, hey, look, you don't have to go to school, you can do this fun, amazing job, you're helping the planet. Like, they psych you up and sell you this, wonderful life of a Sea Org member. And then when it gets down to it, that's not what ends up happening, right?
No, you're right.
What was your post when you were in the Sea Org? Like, what did they sell you on? Hey, you can come and do this, and did you end up doing? Because when I joined staff, it was like, hey, because I wanted to learn law, because I was really interested in like the legal system. They're like, come join us. We'll put you in OSA, and you can get some experience working with some of our legal cases. And I was like, great, that's amazing. That's what I want to do. And the moment I started on staff, it was like, nope, you're in Div 6. You've got to go and sell books. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So as far as I recall, I wanted to be an auditor. That was kind of the most important person. It is the most important, most valuable person on the planet is an auditor, as per L. Ron Hubbard. So that was kind of my dream. Now, that's what I was sold to me. I never actually completed the EPF, so I didn't actually, get hoodwinked and sent on to a different post. But that was my promise.
So where did you go to in America where did you do your EPF? Was it in LA, I'm guessing, right?
Yep. Los Angeles, the big blue building. We used to have musters. There's like a parkade at the end of L. Ron Hubbard Way, and that's where we used to have musters, which is where everyone meets in the morning and does drills like marching and repeating all the fun commands that L. Ron Hubbard said for you to repeat. It's in order to brainwash the people who were there and set them up for years of servitude. Yeah, it was, I think, 30 to 40 of us in a dorm, and I wasn't even shaving at that point. Like, I was so young. Yeah, so that's where I was.
Wow. And firstly, congratulations for getting out and speaking out and sharing your story. I don't want to gloss over the fact that it's a long way to come from signing your life away to something, going through that trauma, being trafficked and forced labor and all of this, and then suddenly now having the power to speak out and start a YouTube channel is amazing. So I didn't want to gloss over that.
Well, thank you.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your family past? I know we talked a little bit before about kind of the important role that your family played in Scientology and that side of things.
Yeah, for sure. So parents divorced around, I think, 11 or 12, I think it was. My dad was much heavier into Scientology and very active, whereas my mom was, due to various reasons, still kind of on her way out. She still believes in L. Ron Hubbard and his teachings and so forth, but the organization of it itself was where she differed on her opinion. Various reasons for that, which I'll definitely get into at some point. My dad was the executive director of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights in Vancouver, which is the arm of Scientology that tries to fight against psychiatry and psychology. So I was constantly inundated with messaging of how bad the public school is, how bad psychiatry is, psychology, anything, any kind of mental health. of any kind was no go for me, which we'll definitely probably get into. Led me into some issues as a teenager, with thoughts of self-harm and so forth, and mental health issues, which I still struggle with to this day. So that's kind of how the parents were in. I also had family, like my sisters, and my brother had left by then, but when I was growing up, he was involved in it as well. So all my family friends, everybody was connected with Scientology.
Mm-hmm. So did you feel quite a lot of pressure from the family side to join the SEAL organization and to be on staff?
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about my dad now, anyway, is when I had decided that I was going to leave, I just kind of faded away, but he didn't force it on me. So he said, you know what, you make your decision, as long as you're not speaking out against it, basically, then that's fine. Just do your thing. And my mom was obviously very supportive of leaving organization, and she still is to this day.
Okay. What was your life like? Firstly, you said you didn't complete the EPF. I'm dying to know why. And then what happened next? Like, did you just kind of go and continue being a public Scientologist? Did you join staff? Like, what was your career like, I suppose, in Scientology?
That's also a good story. So I got my first taste of disconnection during that time when I was down in the Sea Org. Again, 14-year-old. So in the big blue building, in the very basement, there's the galley, which is just basically a big commercial kitchen. Big stainless steel floors with massive pots for making oatmeal and soup and whatever kind of food that's in there. I'm mopping it up as you do in the EPF, a lot of manual labor. And I slipped, and along the bottom of the pots were hot pipes, because that's what they're I guess gas-filled pipes. And my foot and leg lodged underneath the hot pipe and burnt my leg.
Oh my gosh.
So obviously I needed medical attention. It wasn't horrible, but it was an accident. And so I got directly pulled into ethics and was given a PTS condition, given an ethics handling, which I didn't even know what that was at the time because I had never done one. It was lower conditions. And when they do a PTS handling, they locate the person you're suppressive to, the person who is causing this condition in you. And then they also figure out what you've done to that person, because nothing just happens. If you're victimized or you get sick or anything like that, you've done something. You've caused that, right? And it's very, very much victim blaming. And so the person that was suppressive to me was my mom, according to them, or what I had to come up with. Yes. And the reason for that is because, like I said, I was kidnapped. And when she found out, she made me go back up to Canada and convince her that this is what I wanted to do. Not what the Sea Org or Scientology or anything wanted to do, but it's what I wanted to do. And I would die to have that conversation with her on camera and like go over this, because she remembers that very vividly. But then when I got back, that incident happened, and therefore she was suppressive, and they made me write her a letter that completely destroyed our relationship for about 20 years. That I didn't want to see her anymore, that she was evil. And they wrote this stuff down, like and they basically just had me sign it. It was printed out. And that was probably the worst moment of my life. I didn't know at the time, but it completely destroyed the relationship between her and I. She never stopped loving me. And when we did finally get back together later on in life, she obviously forgave me for it. But, that's what they do. That's how they do the disconnection. They put this idea in your mind, and they just make you stick to it. So it was horrible.
It's so horrible to think that not only does this organization exist and do these things, it does so. If you are a US taxpayer, you are subsidizing this behavior. I cannot go on about this enough, because they are tax exempt in the United States of America, which is where a majority of their money goes on. So where the majority of their money comes from. So this is what they do, and they're doing so at the cost to the US taxpayer. I know you're not a US taxpayer, but it's important, because a lot of people are, and that's where the majority of the money come from. So if you are not outraged at this, you should be, because here you are, a child, a teenager, and you've been kidnapped and moved from one country to another, and then you have an accident, you slip over and hurt yourself, and they sit you down and go, what have you done wrong? Why did you do this? And the solution is to disconnect from your own mother. That's atrocious behavior.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Like, it's evil. It's incomprehensible that you could ever just make a child do that. Right. And it's affected me my entire life. It destroyed our relationship. I remember when I would be at home, I was like 16 when I was back from the Sea Org, of course. And these thoughts going through my mind of her being a bad person, right? Like and I would call her names, and I have all this rage and anger towards her for destroying my dream, which she didn't. But that's what was going through my head. And that's what's gross to me, that I let that affect how I thought about her. I let someone else's opinions of her be superimposed onto my personality.
They like to really drive a wedge, don't they? And it's not something to be embarrassed about, Jeff. It's not something that you did wrong, because you are under the influence and the guise of this organization. They're the ones doing wrong. You're a kid, you don't know, right? You are looking up to other people and following their example. You're still learning how to live life, right? So it's not anything to be embarrassed about. It's something that you did, but that's because you were being influenced and coerced and manipulated to do it, right? Yep. This wedge they like to drive between families, particularly. A similar thing happened with my mum. I haven't spoken much about my mum and that whole relationship on YouTube, and I'm going to be doing a video about it at some point. But you can see they started to try and do that with me, and it's something they do with everybody. Is if your family are not 100% on board with Scientology, they will either make you like try and convert them because they need to be on board with it, or they'll force you to disconnect, and it's a horrible thing to do. And you're lucky that you have had that opportunity to reconnect with her afterwards and kind of repair that relationship. What was life like for you after that incident? Once you disconnected from your mum, you were still in LA, right?
Yeah, so I was in LA for a little bit longer, but I didn't realize what I was getting into, and I decided I wanted to leave. I think they were kind of sick of dealing with me because I'm kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. And
same, me too.
Yeah, it's the redhead, right?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention at the beginning, right? Another reason we love Jeff is because he's another ginger former Scientologist, PTS for life. So
it's not nearly enough.
Welcome to the crew. Yeah.
So yeah, I was being a pain in the ass, and I think I got sick again, like really, like not pneumonia, but like close. And they decided they didn't want to deal with me anymore. So I said, okay, here's my negotiation. I will go back to Vancouver and I will join Class 5 org staff there. Now, you're not allowed to join if you've already completed the EPF. You can't go down to a lower level org. But because I didn't, they said, okay, that's fine. And I ended up actually joining staff in DSA at the Vancouver Day organization.
DSA, for those of you watching, is the Department of Special Affairs, right? So that's OSA, but we're at the city level organizations. So were you the DSA, the Director of Special Affairs, or were you a lower post in?
I was in the department. I did a couple different tasks. One of them, of course, was a little bit of spy work on certain suppressive people who were in there, and that was alongside my dad, who was very involved in that. And then I was the drug-free marshal in charge. And essentially, drug-free marshals is the Say No to Drugs campaign front group run by Scientology. And what I would actually do is go around and find celebrities. Vancouver is known as Hollywood North, so a lot of movie shoots were happening then. And I would get them to sign this pledge that says, I won't do drugs and I'll stop drugs and all that usual stuff for Say No to Drugs. But on the bottom of it, every time it said, this is Scientology. Like, it said what it was, but they didn't know what they were signing and who they were getting involved with. And then they would use a picture that I would take of them and the pledge in promotional materials and to advertise the drug-free marshal program. Funnily enough, shortly before he had passed away of a drug overdose, Chris Farley, who was at Planet Hollywood, signed this pledge in front of everybody. There's pictures somewhere in the org there. So it's just kind of ironic that happened. But David Hasselhoff and Gillian Anderson, all these people I found, Ned Beatty, Cloris Leachman. That was kind of my gig, was to go and approach these people on movie sets. I would hang out outside of there's a theater that would have Broadway style shows, and I just hang out outside after closing and just accost them with this pledge after a long day of performing and get them to sign this thing.
And they had no idea it was Scientology, right? You wouldn't go up and go,
No.
"Hey, I'm Jeff from the Church of Scientology. Can
Nope.
you sign my pledge?" You would say, "Hey, I'm from the Foundation for a Drug-Free World," or "I'm from CCHR."
Drug-free marshals.
Right, drug-free marshals.
Yeah, and I would hoodwink them basically into signing. I mean, there was nothing about it that was untoward. It was very basic. I won't do drugs. I'll stop people from doing drugs. I'll educate, whatever. But still, they're involving themselves with an organization which is, trafficking children and kidnapping and forcing labor. So they didn't know, though.
Wow.
So I did that for a while.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, stepping back a bit,
Nope.
Going into the Department of Special Affairs. It's like Div 6, HCO, and the Department of Special Affairs are three really important divisions in a city-level church. And it's hard to get a job in one of those three divisions. If you join staff, there are certain extra requirements or qualifications to work in HCO, which is basically like the HR department of Scientology, Div 6, which is a public-facing stuff. That's what I did, and the Department of Special Affairs, because that's like you are at the forefront of all of the SPs, the attackers, the psychiatrists, everyone that's bad against Scientology, but also like people doing private investigative work, like you're saying, taking on suppressed people and, doing investigations. What was it like joining? Was it because your dad was so influential and important with the CCHR stuff that they just let you join, or did you have to kind of prove yourself?
No, I mean, back then it was a little bit easier, I think. I mean, we're talking the 90s. There wasn't the internet as it is now. There wasn't the people who were fighting against Scientology that DSA was fighting against. The SPs were like handing out pamphlets, and there were the psychiatrists and people like going to the media. So it was a different landscape then. It was much easier to get in. I didn't have a criminal history. I hadn't done drugs. I had all the qualifications. So, and because I was a fixture in that organization already, because I was raised in the halls, literally outside my dad's office. I would get babysat by people who worked there as well. So I was just known, and there was no question that I was loyal at that point. That's really what it comes down to for DSA to get in there, is you have to be not a security threat at all, like no chance of it.
There's a lot of that at London org as well. We talked earlier, we should definitely do a separate video after this where we can talk about the differences and similarities between working at a city level org, because there's not enough of that on YouTube. I think there's a lot of people in the Sea Org and that Sea Org experience, but for those of us like Gabriel Toth, who you know well, that worked at Vancouver, and yourself and me, we all worked at Class 5 city level churches, and there's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. So let's do a video about that. But it's something that does run through, I think, a lot is that second, third generation Scientologist who runs the org, right? London org was like 90% second, third gen Scientologists who were actually the big donors, and their families were the ones keeping the org afloat. And without them, there would be no org. And so all of the really important positions were held by these people because there's no doubt about whether they're a security threat or anything. Was that the case at Vancouver as well?
Yeah, so like the people who really ran that org were, sorry, I'm just seeing a comment there. Kayla B.
Yeah, which one? We can bring it up.
Kayla B. I remember Jeff from way back.
Oh yeah.
Love to know how. Send me a message.
Yeah. How do people contact you if they want to contact you?
I guess they can message me through YouTube. I haven't set up an email account specifically for my account yet.
Okay. Well, if you want to email message privately, email me hello@apostatealex.com, and then I can forward it on to you if you want. So you don't have to share your email publicly.
Yeah. This has only been a few days, so I guess I should set up an email account. Sorry, we're talking about. Okay, so the people who would run the organization for the longest time were like Peter Byrne. He was the ED of the organization itself for the longest time. The Rockles, who are OT8, OT committee members, like they were involved in a Guardian's office, which is what DSA used to be before they got persecuted or prosecuted for interfering with like government, like in the States. I forget the exact story, but Operation Snow White, they were the ones that were involved in that. There was a lot of stuff happening in Canada as well to infiltrate government offices, which I was actually just reading a bit about, and I'm going to do a video on. So these people are the ones that were really running and forming the organization. There were definitely a lot of, and still is a lot of second generation Scientologists running that because they don't have new people coming in, right? They just don't. Why would anybody go in there? I don't know if anyone's seen the Vancouver org before, but it's this old building. It's small. It's in probably, I don't know, 4 blocks away from the worst part of town. The body traffic that's going by there aren't people who have money, right? They're not gonna be able to afford Scientology or have any interest because they have brains. They have better things to do with their time. So, yeah.
Wow. So you went from LA back to Vancouver and you held that post for a little while. How long were you in DSA for?
A couple of years. I don't remember specifically what part of my contract I had left. However, the reason that I had left, and I had alluded to some mental health issues earlier, while I was in that position, I had originated that I was feeling suicidal. And I had actually, I don't know if I should use that word, but
it's done then.
Yeah, it's done now. I had made some attempts and some self-harm, and I communicated this, of all things, in an overt and withhold write-up, because again, I was in trouble. And this was not okay for me to be. You can't be that way. You can't have those thoughts. It's a violation of ethics policies to have that type of stuff happening. And it's definitely a security threat for the organization because they don't want someone acting out any self-harm, especially on the premises. So I had communicated this and I got pulled in by the lady who was the director of special affairs, or the head of DSA at the time. And her response, she was an OT, her response to this was to tell me that if I did this, I would just end up coming back worse than I am now. So I think I was 15 or 16 at that point. To tell a kid who's wanting to harm himself that as the solution was appalling. So at that point, I think I actually ended up getting offloaded from staff or released because of that incident. But that's probably the most traumatic thing that's happened as a child for me.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Like, that's firstly, that's a horrible thing for someone have to go through anyway. You know, mental health is a real thing. It's important, and it's not fun to go through that sort of experience anyway. And to go through that as a teenager, and for the church to tell you to do an OW write up, they're basically saying you are the reason that you're feeling this way. You are the problem. What have you done wrong to create this situation? If someone is feeling that way, the last thing you should do is try and put the blame on them. Right? You need to show care and love and let the person talk it out and say, this is how I'm feeling. Why do you feel like that? Tell me about it. Let's discuss, and
Yeah.
we care about you. We listen to you. That's how to react to this sort of thing. It's atrocious, especially considering they've already torn your family apart and
Yeah.
trafficked you from one country to another.
And you wonder why I
I'm
was
just
having
so
those
sorry
thoughts,
you
right?
went through that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just no communication. There's no like, hey, let's talk about it.
Mm.
It's just blame.
And how did that impact you and your family life with your dad being so important?
Yeah. I mean, I can't actually speak to that necessarily. I don't know.
Mm.
I ended up after that doing some, drugs and alcohol. Obviously I was self-medicating at the time.
Sure.
Um, I remember going into local bars even though I was underage, because that was kind of more okay back then.
Yeah.
As long as you kind of looked like you're 18 or 19 and
Yeah.
no one ever said anything. But
It's
yeah,
like what it is here in the UK. It's like, yeah, you have to be 18 to drink, but I
it's
don't think I ever got it. I remember the first, sorry, slight tangent. First time I ever went to a pub when I did turn 18, I was really disappointed that they didn't check my ID. I was like, but I'm allowed to be here now. Check my ID. So
it's
yeah,
okay.
I
We
get
don't
that.
care.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on. So you,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So I was self-medicating. And I did actually through 20s and 30s as well, quite a bit. I didn't really start um, really focusing on my issues until after I had met my wife now, and she was always someone who I and can still talk to no matter what, no judgment, And it took a long time for me to actually open up to her about my history, even to tell her that I was a Scientologist. It took a long time, so that's really been how I've been able to change my thinking and become a normal person.
Mm. You mentioned something when we spoke before going live about when you told your wife about your history in Scientology. What do you want to just share that little bit of a story? Because I think that this is interesting for a lot of people to know the impact Scientology has on you in your mind. Like when you do finally come out and you move away from Scientology, it's so traumatic and so horrible. You kind of shut down in your mind, right? And you don't want to think about it. You don't want to talk about it. So you got married and your wife didn't even know you were in Scientology, right?
No, sorry, that's my wife there. So I married an ex-Scientologist.
Oh, no way. I love it. Hi. Welcome.
She's downstairs watching live, of course.
Amazing. Welcome to
Um,
the stream.
yeah. So the funny thing about leaving something that you don't want someone to know you're in is you can't really open up and say what you're thinking. You just can't, and you can't really, as supportive as someone is, unless they've experienced it, they can't truly understand. And I think that's for a lot of things. A lot of abuse, you can say, I'm so sorry to hear that, and I understand, let's talk about it. But until you've done it, you don't truly know.
Mm.
So that was kind of why I didn't want to talk about it, is because I didn't have anyone that I felt I could talk to and fully be understood. Obviously, with the X community now, that's a bit easier. But my wife, took the time to really understand and listen. And while she couldn't necessarily fully empathize and know what I went through, she knows, and she tells me how important it is that I do talk to her, so that we can get to the bottom of it. And she also encouraged me to see a psychologist, which was probably the hardest thing, as I think a lot of people who grew up in Scientology know, to see is a psychologist. Like, the last person that you think you should be seeing is that person.
Yeah.
So she would just listen, and she would never push it. She would just let me talk when I was ready. And she watches most videos with me as well, like all the X stuff. So she's pretty genned in on what's going on and disconnection and so forth. So it's been amazing to have her there. I don't think I would be who I am in this position if she didn't open up with me.
You're so lucky to have that in your life, and it's, you know, it's kind of like the silver lining, really, isn't it, that even though you've gone through this horrible thing, you have managed to find love and find someone that cares for you and listens to you and supports you in every way. So massive respect to Jeff's wife in the chat. I mean, well done. You are amazing, and it's people like you that allow us to kind of recover and heal and think about what happened and come to terms with it, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk? Let's go back a little bit with your story. So, in terms of what happens next, what you were on staff, you're rooted off staff because of this traumatic thing. Then what happens? Are you still a teenager at this point? You are, aren't you? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to say probably like 16, 17 is when this was all kind of popping off. And I left staff and I just kind of faded away a little bit. I think I did a couple courses. It was just kind of a general public. I've never really been much of a public. I've either been on staff or kind of on the sidelines and then back on staff.
Where did you get to on the bridge, by the way, just out of interest?
Yeah, so drug rundown was my auditing.
Okay.
And for courses was method 1, student hat.
And this is the thing. Yeah,
No,
I think a lot of people ask that question and think, oh, you've been a Scientologist for 20 years, you're going to be OT8. No. When you're on staff, you do not make progress up the bridge.
No.
Right? Because you're spending all of your time working for the church and doing your hatting. You don't have time to go up the bridge. So I just wanted to paint that picture.
And you have a full-time job. Like, you work a full 8-hour shift at a regular job. I was on foundation for further on in my career. Obviously, as a teenager, I didn't have a job, but any time that I was back on staff, I just have a full-time job. So I literally go from my work to the org, work for another, 6 to 10, so 4 hours. Sometimes if there was a staff meeting, we'd be there after another hour and a half, 2 hours. So you get off at midnight, go home, go to sleep, go back to work, right? And on the weekend, it's full 8 hours. So it's 7 days a week.
Yeah.
With no time. You don't have time to do training.
Yeah. So, okay. So you were rooted off staff and you're kind of a public, and then staff again. That happened a couple of times, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I would just keep getting recruited. I feel kind of stupid sometimes, not now, obviously. But like, how do I fall for this over and over again? And I really realize that it's just my sense of wanting to help. The help is misguided. The help that I'm apparently giving is misguided, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that I am a good person and I want to make the world a better place. So that's the way they'd always get me is, if we don't do this, nothing, like, the world is going to end. We will all be suffering forever in this endless cycle of death and birth. You know what I mean? It's always so urgent, and that would always get me. But I would always get in trouble. I was never, I'm still not. I've never been one to bow down to authority. I don't like being told what to do. I like to blaze my own path and do what I feel is right. So
That's
I think that's
definitely
why
a
I always
ginger
act
thing.
up.
I'm the same. I'm the same. When that's what got me into the most trouble in Scientology is not liking being told what to do and being like, well, no, this is the policy. This is what it says. So that's what I'm going to do. And you can't tell me to do otherwise, especially when your stats are up and you've got ethics protection. You're like, fuck off. I'm going to do what I want. Right.
Yep. Yeah. So going back to the auditing, kind of a funny story is my last time on staff, I was getting into some trouble and I was acting out quite a bit, and I was put on an HCO confessional, very heavy, tailor-made one by the newest class 8 senior CS, very hard ass person who didn't like me very much. And she put me through this massive confessional and would not let me be done until every single thing I've ever done wrong, if I looked at somebody the wrong way. And I still left, even after having successfully completed this, which, according to them, the phenomena at the end is that you want to stay because all your crimes are cleared up. So why would you want to leave? And I was a staff member. So you're supposed to get all your auditing for free as a staff member. Yeah. But in this case, because I was tying up the only high-level auditor in the organization, I was given the amazing courtesy of only having to pay half price, which, if anyone in Scientology knows, that's like $2,000 every 12 and a half hours. So, it'd be cheaper to go see a psychologist. Meant to
get. If you go to another org, like if I was to go to St. Hill as a London staff member, the deal is you get it half price, right? And it's meant to be like you get free servicing in your own org as a thank you, as an exchange for your work on staff, because you don't get paid anywhere near a minimum wage. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you want to help people. So in return, Scientology give you free servicing and free processing when you can find the time to do that, which is basically never. So the fact that even their own policy is not being applied and giving you free auditing is insane. And how are you meant to pay for this servicing when you're not being paid anything by the church and you're tired and overworked and you're doing another job outside of it,
You borrow. And I did.
You have to.
I had to borrow from another staff member. And I had to pay them back, and I did. And then because I was in an important post. I was bookstore officer, as you know, very similar to yours, where at that time, that was kind of what Captain Dave was pushing. Sorry. You guys
he loves it.
Hat here,
he
right?
loves it.
So he was pushing this, and so I was fairly important, and I had to get through this. And so they actually also did the courtesy of billing me for further confessional. So I owed them money. And when I had left at that point, they said, "Oh, by the way, you owe us some money." I said, "Oh, by the way, I don't," and just sort of walked away, because it's like, what are you thinking? I'm not going to give you guys money when you've done all this to me. So I just thought it was kind of funny. I never did pay it. I think I owed them I quote unquote owed them like $4,000.
Yeah.
So, but they were pushing. They were pushing staff auditing as a way to make money in Vancouver, because they couldn't get any more. Right? Like, it's insane.
Yeah. I was meant to get I think the reason I didn't get a freeloader debt is because they actually owed me money. It would have been a negative money, because I had paid for services and things and books, for example. I would buy from the org at a wholesale price and then sell them from my own stock at retail price, so I can make a bit of money from selling books. So when I left, my staff dismissal, I've got it somewhere, it says you'll receive an account from the cashier as to how much money is due, and you can't receive processing until you made good your indebtedness. I never received my freeloader debt, and later on, a few years later, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, dude, you've still got £100 on account. Why aren't you doing any servicing?" And it's because my freeloader debt would have been negative. They would have had to have paid me £100.
They don't do that.
No, they absolutely do not.
No, no, money
No.
never comes out of the organization.
No, precisely. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience as the bookstore officer and what that was like? Was that
Yeah.
because you worked both at Vancouver and Toronto, right? You did a stint in both places.
Yeah. So, sort of with Vancouver, I was the bookstore officer specifically. I was hired during the whole Golden Age of Knowledge release, which is all the release of the where Captain Dave changed all the materials and re-released them and repackaged them in order to sell them to the public again. So I was there for I think about 2 years doing that, and that was kind of funny. I'm a decent salesman. I like to talk to people, and I'm good at telling them why it's good for them to have something, and so I was pretty good at the post. The reason I had ended up with the last Sea Org bid was because I was so good. They wanted me to go replace like the person in charge in Canada, in charge of all the book sales. They wanted me to replace that person who was going to a different post. So that was the last contact that I had with the Sea Org. But Class 5 org staff was great because as a bookstore officer, at least at the time, I do remember it did change. They really removed the policy, but you'd get commissions. So I wasn't the highest paid person there because the executive director made a decent amount of money. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of cool. And I really enjoyed at the time listening to lectures, and I would just listen to them and then just say, hey, I learned this and you could learn it too. And they would just buy.
What was that like being a salesperson? Because for me, I was director of public book sales. So bookstore officer is one of the posts that would have been was in my department. And we were quite a young, cool team. So going out book selling, phoning people out to reg them and stuff like it was quite fun and cool. And that's why it was so enjoyable. But you don't realize at the time what you're actually doing is manipulating and coercing people, because it's policy to invade someone's privacy in order to sell them the book, right? Because you have to find their ruin. But you don't think of it in that way. You think of it as I'm helping this person, right? What was that like for you?
So, I mean, it sounds like from what you're describing, were you talking about reaching out to new public or existing public?
So my job was public book sales. So I was out, MBS raw book sales. But because of my skills in sales, we would often have, call-ins and stuff, all hands, where we'd have to sit down and we'd like call up people to get them to buy more books or get them to come into the org to go attend to an event or whatever. It wasn't my post, but it was one that I help out in. If it's an existing Scientologist, we want to register them for more money.
For sure, yeah. So for me, I was never really, except for the occasional like craft fair or farmers market, we weren't involved in external book sales. It was just a public. So like all the basic books and the congresses, which are the lectures, it was just all off call-in list, and then of course events. And I would actually like wait outside the course room at 10 p.m. when it would end and sell people books there if I knew they were, they had money on account or something and they were ready to buy. They hadn't bought yet because we had detailed lists of what everybody owned, what people have partially paid for, because you can do like a layaway kind of thing. And I would just hammer that every single person I'd see. You bought a book, you bought a book, you bought a book, lecture. And then when bigger events would happen, so like the New Year's event when it used to happen, and LRH's birthday event, or if there was a new release, there was always the bag drill, which I don't know if you guys did that over there.
Okay. What's the bag drill?
Yeah. So the bag drill, like as staff members, anyone who was involved in selling a new release had to drill after post or during post what's called the bag drill. And that's literally you put an item in a bag, which is a Golden Age, like a paper bag, Golden Age Knowledge bag with a lecture to represent the whole series. And this is the sales tactic. The event ends. Captain Dave has just spent a bunch of time hard selling everybody on how great this new release is. And you walk up to them and you say, cash or credit. That's it. Every single staff member had to do it. And I found that so, it was kind of demeaning to the staff, but also so arrogant on Miss Gabbage's part, where he's such a good salesman that we don't need to say anything. He's done all the work. And all we do is say cash or credit. Right. And to be honest, a lot of people did buy them.
It's such a good sales tactic, but also so horrible. We didn't have that exact drill, but we did use the same tactic. For example, if we were having 2 showings of like in the maiden voyage event or something, you know, we would be like, you phone someone up, are you coming in the morning or are you coming in the afternoon? The option to say I'm not coming isn't an option. It's like, you have to have this arrogance. And it does work, but it's horrible to do to people because, you know, it is
taking away any power of choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. That was always the worst. There is just no choice. It's just you're controlling someone every aspect of it, which is why it's just a destructive cult. There's just nothing about it that is not that. Every aspect of it is about controlling somebody and getting them to do what you want them to do. You know, I mean, the fact that you have to sell someone so hard to do something, there's something wrong with it, right? Like people do things that are good for them pretty readily for the most part. But if you're constantly having to bring someone into rewatch an event, you know, enlighten them, keep pushing it, push, promote, contact. It's like, there's something wrong with it. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's the way I think about it.
I think before we carry on, I want to just tell everyone in the chat, Jeff has a YouTube account called PTS for Life. He's just joined SPTV and is starting to speak about his experience. So go and click on the link I just put in the chat and go and give him a subscribe, give him a like, and watch some of the videos he's got on there already. We are streaming this from his channel, so if you want to watch this video from his channel, then that will help him get the watch hours he needs to become monetized and get all that sort of stuff started. Jeff, do you want to talk us through the decision, like how you left firstly, and then how you got into YouTube? Like, what was that process like, having been on staff, being kicked out, and all of this, leaving and having a family still in, and so on?
Yeah. So as far as family goes, yes, some of my family is still in. I'm not super connected with them. I have like a half sister and a brother-in-law. I don't really talk to them very much, just due to like past familial issues and so forth. My dad is still in. He is older, and I don't think that he is super active anymore. There's just nothing for him to do for various reasons. So my process of leaving was, in my last video, I described it basically when I left the Sea Org. I didn't really go back. I think I got contacted a few times, and I was so disaffected that I just started saying to the Sea Org members about Xenu and like just anything I could possibly do to offend them, so they just stopped contacting me. Like they would find out where I worked and call me at work and say, hey, we got a service we want you to do. Come in. We want to handle you, blah, blah, blah. And I would just be like, what are you doing? You know, I'm at work, I never told them where I worked because I didn't work there when I was in. So they tracked me down, which is what they do. You know, they got nothing else to do other than track people down and whatever. And I suspect this will probably result in that too. And I frankly don't care. Anyway, so when I left, between then and now, there's been about 10, 11 years. And I've had a lot of time to reflect and figure out. I kind of did my treason condition, which is a condition of existence where I find out who I really am, right? And it's not what they normally expect you to come up with, but I found out that I am not a Scientologist, and I am a human being, right? I'm just a human being. I bet
they love that.
I just am me. So I think it's pretty funny. All the conditions of existence are all geared towards, if you don't choose Scientology, you're wrong, and you just go.
It's like the doubt formula, right? When you have to do
Yeah.
the doubt formula, and you have a doubt about a group, and you're trying to figure out whether to leave or whether to stay. You're meant to assess all of the data you have about the both groups, right? And you're meant to kind of analyze it in a really methodical way to then decide whether your doubt is correct and you should leave or whether you should stay. But the problem is, A, you don't have access to all the real data about Scientology because they lie about all their statistics. And B, if you did do that and come at the end of it and go, yeah, you know what, Scientology isn't the right group to be in, they would say, what word have you gone past that you don't understand?
Yeah.
Because that's the wrong answer. Yeah. What did you do wrong?
Yeah. And I actually did that one time. My answer was, I don't want to be a Scientologist, and just made me redo it. And I actually think I'm hoping I can chat with Gabrielle Toth. She has a channel as well, Escaping the Cultiverse. Very Canadian. She's just in the middle of like a move and stuff, so she's waiting to get her stuff set up. But we have plans to do some chats for sure. But I do remember answering that where I said, no, it's not what I want. And yeah, they just made me do it again. So just to answer one question, Peggy Dooley, yes, I am Canadian. I am from Vancouver.
There we go, 100%. There was a comment actually I started it a second ago from Linda Lou. Just started watching, but I knew from the moment he opened his mouth he was a fellow Canadian, lol.
What are you talking about?
That's actually a really good point about Gabrielle Toth. So for those of you who haven't watched it, I did an interview with her. She's the former executive director of the Church of Scientology Vancouver and started a channel, and we're all geared up and ready to go. And then she suddenly had to move house, and so she's kind of put the channel on hold for now. But I do believe she has now moved and is in the final stages of getting that all set up and settling into her new place. So when she is settled in, I'm sure she'll be straight up there with some more content, and you guys should totally do a video together. Did you work with Gabrielle? Were you there at the same time, or okay?
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. She was in the ethics officer COPOF position. Sorry, COPOF is it's a position where basically she gets all the shit. She has to deal with all the stuff that all the stuff in the organization that no one else wants to deal with. Is essentially how it works out. But she was, and the shit that she got from me is she had to deal with me because I was a pain in the ass at the time. And our relationship was very special and still is. She holds a very special part in my heart. She's had a pretty rough go of things leaving, and her story is so much more horrific than I can even imagine. But she's fighting back, and it's gonna be really good. We're gonna do a lot of videos, and actually we were wondering if we could do a video with you, kind of do like a 3
let's do it. I'm always down, 100%, without a doubt. Like, I love Gabrielle so much, and it's great to hear more stories coming out from Class 5 orgs, because there's so much attention on Los Angeles and in the Sea organization, and it's important that those stories are told 100%. But what I want to really make clear to people is this isn't just some crazy American cult in LA and in Florida. No, this is something that happens globally around the world in pretty much every city on planet Earth that has a Scientology organization. There are hundreds of these places, and Scientology doesn't change according to which country you're in. It has to be applied the same in every single country. And yes, there are cultural differences, but the abuses that happen are fundamental to Scientology's nature. It's not just it happened here this one time. No, it's actually what Scientology does. It's the way that it operates, right?
Yeah, and it's policy. Fair game. It's not gone. It's not canceled. It's just, the issue may have been canceled, but that doesn't mean anything. They still go around. I was involved with it with my dad in when he was in CCHR. I would go with him as a child and spy on suppressives. One of them.
What was that like, being in the Department of Special Affairs as a teenager and going on those investigative kind of trips?
Well, at the time, like I said before, I didn't really appreciate what Scientology was and what the SPs were, but I would basically just be told that they're bad people and they're evil. And that's all you need to tell a child, right? Like, a child isn't going to be like, "Oh, well, let's not do something against him then because he's evil." No. You're taught that evil needs to be thwarted. And so that's what we were doing. Um, and obviously, when you're with your dad, you want to be like him. You want to protect him and follow in his footsteps, sort of thing. So that's just the formation of who I was then versus who I am now. That's been one of the biggest changes, is finding out who I truly am, how I actually think, and not how I was taught to think. That's an ongoing daily thing in my life, which we discussed before privately there, about coming out and figuring out how to be normal again.
Yeah, because Scientology becomes your purpose, right?
Yeah.
The thing for me was like, so you want to help people, right? Yes, of course, I want to help people in their life.
Mhm.
Okay, well, you've been helped by Scientology, right? Yes, I have. Well, therefore, why wouldn't you join staff? Why wouldn't you sign your life away, your 1 billion-year contract, to dedicate this life and all of your future lives to helping people with Scientology? Because that's if you don't do that, then you're a dick, because
Yeah.
you want to help people and you think this is helping people. And it's that guilt trip is horrible, but it completely changes the way you think about things and the way you process information, because literally your purpose in life is Scientology, and that is the reason for everything. So when you come out, it takes years to go down that journey of figuring out, well, who am I really, and what parts of me were Scientology and what parts of me are actually me. Who am I? What am I doing? Why am I here in this life? What's my purpose? They're big questions, and it takes a lot of time and effort to try and get the answers. And I don't have the answers to those questions
No.
yet, and I've only been recovering for like a year, really.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, I was born into it. It was all I knew growing up.
Mm.
I didn't even go to public school to like learn about other ways of life. Like, the curriculum in the school I went to was garbage. So with that train of thought constantly being hammered into my brain, about Scientology is the only way, and it's saving the universe. It's the biggest purpose that ever could exist.
Yeah.
And how do you come out of that and then go
And not just
into
saving the universe, it's saving the universe on a spiritual level. Like, it's not just, it transcends the physical universe. It's like on a spirit, like there isn't a bigger game you can play, is
no,
how they would phrase it, right?
and it's hammered in,
Yeah.
like consistently hammered in every event, every promo, everything you do in Scientology is, this is the only game you should be playing. So I think the biggest issue for me coming out of that was, now what do I do? I've just been doing the most important thing in the world's universe of all time ever. And now I'm playing racquetball or riding a bike and working, it's just it's so demeaning. Like, now your life means nothing because you're not doing the one thing that you should be doing. And that's been the hardest thing for me to get over and to find purpose in life. And I kind of feel like after all these years and starting this channel now, I find I have more of a purpose, because this is more important than whatever Scientology is doing.
Gabrielle said it really nicely, actually, when I interviewed her. She said, I helped a lot of people get into Scientology. Now I want to help people get out.
Yep.
And I've hung on to that, or as they'd say in Scientology, glommed on. I really like that saying, and I use that now daily, because it has helped me find a sense of purpose of, like, yes, I still want to help people, right? And I understand Scientology isn't the way to do that, but this community is so supportive and helpful. And like, I found a bit of a sense of a purpose and belonging, because we're all here again, united, trying to do the same thing. But there's a big difference. No one's pressuring me to do it. No one's telling me what to do. No one's saying you have to do this, do that. Like, it's up to me who I interview, how many videos I do. Like, I'm the one in control, and trying my best to help people, and seeing people like Gabriel, like you, come forward and say, hey, I've got a story too, and I want to share my experiences. It's magical to see. What was that jump like for you, from having been out of Scientology to now suddenly, hey, I want to start a channel and talk about it?
I've been watching all the channels lately and over the past 10 years. I first started with Chris Shelton's channel, and his videos really helped break down all the things that I believe and were taught in Scientology, and kind of corrected them. He has a really simple, direct way of saying why it's not true. He does such a good job of explaining that. And so that was very valuable. And then, of course, I'm watching Aaron and you and Claire and Mark and Mike and all that. And I'm kind of thinking, I think I've figured it out for myself. I think I know where I want to go, where I don't want to go. And where I want to go now is to fight against it. But not in a violent way, because I don't actually care if someone believes in Scientology or not. I couldn't give any rat's ass about that. I consider myself agnostic. I don't have that belief. So I don't want to fight against someone's right to believe in something, but I do want to fight against abuse. I want to fight against people being wronged and being told wrong information under false pretenses, which causes them to be tricked, scammed, abused, trafficked, all the stuff that Scientology is doing. The Church of Scientology, the organization itself, is the problem, not Scientology. You can do whatever you want. I don't care about independent Scientologists. I think you're wasting your time personally, but that's up to you. And that's your choice to make. I don't want people to be wronged anymore.
This is the thing. You can believe in what you want to believe in. You can believe that the sky is green and grass is blue for all I care. You're wrong, but you can believe that. That's fine. And I have no issue with that. But what I do have an issue is when an organization or when a belief system allows something to happen, like with you, when you were literally kidnapped as a child and trafficked to a different country to work for an organization and do hard manual labor for multiple hours every single day. Like, we're not talking a walk in the park here, do this for a couple of hours to volunteer to help your local food bank. No, you are doing ridiculous levels of work that's inhumane. That is what Scientology does. It did it to you, and it's done it to many, many other people. And that's where I have the problem. You can believe in Scientology all you want. Doesn't matter. I have a problem when Scientology, believing in Scientology, results in behavior like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think when Scientology calls people bigots and says that they're fighting against religious freedom, it's just not true. For most people. I mean, I'm not saying that obviously you can't blanket statement everybody, but most people agree that you can believe what you want. Just don't let it affect other people.
Yeah.
Do your own thing and just leave people alone. Let sleeping dogs lie, that's all I want.
Yeah, and good on you, and congratulations for starting your channel. I'm really excited to see the content that you're going to be putting out there, and we'll have to do lots of these. There's so much stuff to cover and talk about. Guys, if you're watching on my channel, subscribe to Jeff, PTS for life. I'm wearing the t-shirt to promote it. So go and show him some love and welcome into SBTV. Jeff, do you want to do some questions? I've been starring stuff as we've gone through.
Happy to.
If anything jumps out that you want to pull up, we can just pull it up. It's not a problem. So going back to the first one I started, Michelle Norris, kidnapped and trafficked between Canada and the US, that poor child, then facing forced labor. I think it's gross, right?
Yeah. And on that, funnily, so Canada, it's got the reputation for being cold. It's not all the time, really. But
I've got family in Canada. I've been there only in the summer, and it's lovely in the summer.
But you've been to Edmonton and stuff in Calgary, right?
Yeah.
That gets cold.
It does get. They get 6 foot of snow every year.
I live on the West Coast
in the winter.
It just rains a lot. It's gray a lot of the time.
Right.
Anyway,
same here in London. I get you. It's the same.
Yeah, you know what's up. So one of the worst things that I had to do while I was down there, as far as labor goes, is I actually went to Gold Base because they were doing some filming.
While you were on staff.
Sorry.
While you were on staff.
When I was 14, went down to the Sea Org.
Yeah. To do your EPF.
So I was on my EPF, and they pulled the EPF workers to go do work at Gold Base, which is in Hemet. It's the international base that everyone, where the hole was and so forth. I was made to sign an NDA that said that if I revealed the location of where I was going, it was $10,000 or something like that. I was 14. That meant nothing to me. And I bet you anything that wasn't legally enforceable anyway.
It's not legally enforceable to force a child to sign a contract.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I'm sure that I was just scared. But we were made to unload semi-trucks full of props in 110-degree heat for the full day, looking like this. As you know, anyone who's a redhead knows.
Nope, not gonna happen.
And we were fed a couple times during the day, but we would just be given emergency in water and electrolyte drink and so forth throughout the day, because that would stop us from getting heat stroke, of course. Right? It didn't, because I did get heat stroke. But you can't stop working because you get yelled at. So that was probably the worst. Speaking of labor, that was probably the worst day. And then, of course, the 36-hour straight day, which I'm actually planning on doing a video on pretty quick here. So,
yeah. Wow, it's amazing. I mean, I can, as a fellow redhead, I can speak to what Jeff is saying. You do not want to be outside in that sort of temperature in the sun in California. Like, you must look like a tomato.
I mean, I do normally, but yeah. We've had some unseasonably warm weather the last few months, actually. So I've got, my good base tan and a good farmer's tan going. So.
Oh yeah, this is a tan for me. Yeah. This is really brown for me. Like, I am paper white normally,
especially from the UK.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. Mashmir, Dokagol, Scientology really are professional about child neglect. Yeah. That's true.
The only thing they're professional about.
Yeah, exactly. Goldie, subscribe to Jeff here if you haven't already. There's the link. It's in the chat as well. Go show him some love. Welcome to SVTV. Anti-Harju, thank you for the super chat. I know it's not quite coffee, but still, that's a point. Jeff, have you set up a buy me a coffee yet? If you haven't, let's get that set up. You have?
I did.
Okay, great.
And it's there. There should be a link in the video on my channel to this as well. I'll put it in my my main info as well.
Fantastic. So because Jeff isn't monetized just yet, if you want to support him financially, instead of getting super chats and everything, buy him a copy with the link in his description. That's a really good way of helping people, helping us and our channels grow. Love Sherlock. Oh no, just saw a post at another live. Who is Jeff? I'll go back and watch from the beginning later. Yeah, go back, watch from the start. Jeff has a really interesting story, which I think we've covered. We won't repeat ourselves too much. Hill 10 Fap aka CO Bilf. It seems like Scientology secretly and unofficially thinks gingers are magic because of Elron.
Yep.
That is funny.
We just have no souls.
We don't have any soul. Yeah, well, we are a soul. We're a Thetan, right?
Well, I kind of wonder if a ginger doesn't have body Thetans because we don't have souls.
We totally. That
are we naturally OT?
Thing. We're just naturally OT.
Never thought about that before.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Carol, wanting to clear the planet and then disconnecting families, it's doomed. Yeah. I mean, the same with Happy Puff in here.
Going back to that one.
Less than you think. Yeah.
Going back to that point about disconnecting, is if you alienate every single person that you have in your organization, how is that good for business? Like they're like Aaron says all the time, they're doing everything to themselves. They're just destroying themselves, which funnily enough is one of the main ways an SP stops himself from doing harm, is they do themselves in, according to Scientology, right? Like that's the main thing they do, is they reduce their ability to be effective. So that's exactly what they're doing. And so clearly Captain Dave is an SP.
Yeah, and they don't know what they're doing. Like so many of their policies don't make sense because they contradict each other. And
Yeah,
you know, if you pull up a policy that says do this, you will be able to find another one that says do the opposite. But I'm yet to find the policy that says gin isn't actually OT. We should try and find one. Maybe get AI to write it for us. Love Sherlock and COS Scientology got away with kidnapping and trafficking him to the US. How's that possible? Tax exemption here. Yeah, that's how they get away with it. They can hide behind the First Amendment, and their protection as a religion allows them to get away with this shit.
Yep. They do get away with it too, because if you're involved in Scientology, you're not allowed to go to the police. No matter what they say in their press releases and so forth, you're just not allowed to. You can't speak out against an organization or a person in the organization without being declared a suppressive person. And if you're declared a suppressive person,
yeah,
you can't go up the bridge. So there goes your dream.
It's a high crime to speak out against Scientology. It's a high crime to report another Scientologist to law enforcement. So if you do any of those things and you have a family member or a friend that is still in, you risk being disconnected and your family torn apart. So you're not, even if you're being abused and trafficked and kidnapped and so on, you're not going to go and report it to the police, because that means you're going to lose your family and not be able to progress in Scientology.
Yeah, exactly.
Auntie, again, thank you for the super chat. Love you both. So glad you survived. And another one here from the same person. Love your work, Alex. You do good work. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And
I agree.
I think thank you. That's what we're all trying to do here, is kind of, share people's experiences and give people a platform to do that. And I can't wait to do more and more videos with you for sure. There's a couple more. Let's just power through these. Love Sherlock again. Jeff, you're a good person. There's so many good folks go in hoping to save the world.
Yeah,
that's how they got me. You can save the world. You can be a superhero. Great. Sign me up.
Who doesn't want to save the world?
Yeah, exactly. No love involved in anywhere in the Church of Scientology. You can't help anyone or the planet without love. Yeah.
I agree.
Love is absent in Scientology. Okay, last couple is Anon, what were your first thoughts on when Xenu came to your attention?
How much time do we have? I'll make it a very quick story. So in, I guess in 97, 98, I was very much involved in the internet forums and coding and so forth. So I was on the computer a lot, and I went on to Alt Religion Scientology group, and I read a lot of the OT levels back then. I heard Xenu and I saw Xenu, but I didn't know what it was. So I was only under the impression that if I kept reading that I would be in trouble and I would die as a result. So I kind of blocked it out. And then later on, when I was reading about Xenu, because there's so much space opera and science fiction in all the lectures, it's phenomenal what is in there that probably shouldn't be public. A lot of I won't get too deep into it, but anyway, it's insane. And this is touted as reality incidents that happened way back in the whole track, or in the history of the universe as a Thetan. So when I heard the Xenu, I'm like, yeah, that kind of lines up with everything that I've already kind of been listening to. So it wasn't that shocking to me. That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, him of Asia and that sort of stuff, the seeds are planted to allow you to when you do read those documents, think maybe it's not as wacky as you think. My viewpoint, I heard about Xenu before I joined and would regularly be asked about space aliens and space opera and stuff. And the back of my mind, I used to think, well, look, I don't know whether that is the scripture or not, but either way, yes, it sounds wacky. But when I get to OT3, I will understand and it will make sense. It doesn't make sense now, but that's because I haven't got all of the tech. I haven't got all the knowledge. And when I get there, it will make sense to me. So I didn't completely dismiss it in my mind as completely wacky, right? Was it similar for you, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't enlightened enough to understand. And which leads, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's not our fault. We're not wrong.
Yeah. Precisely. And the final question, love Sherlock, Alex and Jeff, how about Venmo? Venmo, I can't get in the UK. It's not a UK thing, but you can donate through Coffee or PayPal. There's a link to that in my description. Jeff, can you get Venmo in Canada? I don't know if it's...
I can. I don't have it.
Okay. It might be worth getting. A lot of people like to donate that way and through Amazon and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I can. My goal will be to get as many subscribers right now as possible. That's a really good way. So spread the word. And that in the long run, that's what I'm looking for, because the more people I can say my stories to, the more people that will not get into Scientology. So
yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for doing this, and welcome to SPTV.
Thanks.
I suppose. Everyone who's watching this, go and show Jeff some love. I can't say it enough. Go and give him a subscribe and a like and a comment. PTS for life. What can everyone look forward to from your channel in the next couple of weeks? What are you working on at the moment?
Oh, I've got some good ones. So I'm trying to go a slightly different direction than all the other channels. You guys have done such a good job of covering most things. I can only tell my story. However, I want to interject it with some fun to make it a little bit of my own personality and the entertainment of it all, as well as there's going to be some pretty heartbreaking stories, but I want to make it fun and try and drive people to where they can recover. And the most effective way to go from maybe you're in the bubble still, or even not even considering, you just stumble upon my channel, to make it easy for you to find those things that will help break all the bonds that are holding you in the religion.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to see what you've got in store for us, and I will be there in all of your live streams. If you do live streams, I'll be commenting, and let's definitely do another video together soon and do one with Gabriel as well. So thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it, and welcome to SPTV.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone watching. I look forward to seeing you all in my future videos.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Go and show Jeff some love, and we'll see you guys very soon. Thank you.